This video is full of spoilers, but if you have read till the 7th book of the Wheel of Time series by now, you can continue watching this video. So hey hello all, welcome to Sam's Books Review. Before getting into the video, I do want to mention you that I do completed 50% of the Wheel of Time series by now, and it has been 1 year by now. Still I started reading the series, so I do thought this is going to be a right time to make a video on my favorite characters and my best plot lines and my best moments in the series and some other cool stuffs, and I do want to sum up the video by ranking all the books. So without further ado, let's get into the video. And first of all, I do want to start up with my best moment in the series, and it is going to be Celine revealing herself as Lanfear. There are very few moments in the series where you just came upon and look back and say, dude, I didn't see that one coming. The reason behind the scene, which is somewhat really very perfect, is it didn't came out of nowhere. This plot has been introduced at the way back in the Great Hunt itself and giving some creepy feel around Celine's character. But still, we can't able to judge her as a dark friend because she just wanted to help Rand, right? So there is always some suspicion around her, and finally she just revealed herself. The moment is super awesome, dude. I do still remember the whole action sequence. The door is being knocked, Rand opens up, and the Isle army is being dead outside, and Celine revealing herself as Lanfear. Rand does reaches out to Calendar, but he can't able to reach them, and Moraine and Perrin fighting off all the Trollocs outside, and finally Rand just bursts up and channels Saidin and kills all the Trollocs and Mitrils with the lightning. The whole sequence is awesome. The some of the other moments which I can able to say is Padan Fane escaping Faldara. There is a somewhat a creepy feel around at that point in time, and the battle takes place in a tier but the very end of Dragon Reborn book. There are some traditional fantasy tropes being applied into them, but still, I do love those scenes. And the final battle takes place in a Dumais well. That too is awesome, but nothing is close to this one. And my disappointing moment, how I do define this one is when the scene does have a lot of potential, but the author does fail to execute it well. And it is going to be Moraine's death. Maybe I would get a lot of hate for this comment, but the major character's death in the series can takes place in a two way. First is it is a total shock. For example, let us take Ned Stark's death, and the other one is giving some creepy feel around the character and finally knocking off them with that killer blow. For example, let us take Red Wedding. Moraine's death doesn't fall into either of these two categories. After coming out of the ring, then she does behave very awkwardly among other characters. She does submit herself to Rand, and he doesn't want to hold power when he talks to Igwen. All these things it doesn't give any creepy feeling, but it makes her character look very weird. And this moment is somewhat really very disappointing. By the end of the scene, I do half wish the Landfear to be alive at that point in time. I don't personally love Morena, but some of the booktubers it does rank her really very high. I don't know what made them to love her, but yeah, this is one of my disappointing moment in the series. And the next thing I do love to share about my best POV character on the series, and that is going to be Perenayapra. I do love the characters who does takes upon responsibilities without any disconcern. And Perry does this often in the series. For example, let us take the Great Hunt. Perry does follows the Shynerian soldiers to help Matt, right? Doesn't have no need to follow them, but still he has done that. He does things which seems to be right at the point in time. He does helps all his two river folks. All those things made me to love this character much more and connect to him very much. I do love this guy. His relationship with the file is a somewhat really very awkward at some point in time, but every character's relationship is somewhat awkward in the series, right? So let's leave that aside. And he does often disappears from the series, but when he's been on the page, he is super cool. So I do love this one. He's one of my top five favorite characters in my fantasy genre. There's no doubt in that. And my disappointing POV character, it is going to be Matt Cawthon. Before reading the series, I do watch every booktube as a character tie list on the Wheel of Time series, and I often noticed that Matt does have occupied in the top three of all the booktubers character tie list. So I just started to imagine myself in this character before starting the series, and he is often a disappointment, and more so, he is really very vulnerable among the cast crew because every other person does have an supernatural ability, right? They can be able to touch the true source and perform magic, but Matt doesn't have any special abilities. Perrin does have a warg aspects, but Matt can able to manage an army, but that is not very much a concerning thing, right? Because 10 Icerise can be able to destroy an army, so yeah, it is not at all appealing to me. In Dragon Reborn book, I do love his character very much. After that book, his character somewhat slipped behind and behind. And before starting the Crown of Swords book, I do notice that he does have nine chapters in this book. I was super pumped up. So finally, I can be able to get 10 POV character of a Matt for a long time. And I do read this book, and it is super disappointing. Every character's been assassinated in the Crown of Swords book, and Matt does experience a terrible damage in that one. So yes, he's a very disappointing one. But if I won't be surprised if he is in my top three character list by the very end of the series. He has a potential. Brandon Sanderson got a need to write him pretty well. So moving on, and my best plot line in the whole of the Wheel of Time series by now, it is going to be Perrin helping the two river folks in fighting off the Trollocs and Minerals. This whole plot is awesome. I can't able to pinpoint any specific moment, and I can say the scene is awesome, but the whole plot line is super cool. In Shadow Rising, when no one does a turn back to two rivers to help their family, Perrin does takes the courage to do so, right? Without anyone to accompany him. Hmm. He's super cool, man. The whole strategies he does make that to tackle the white cloaks and the Trollocs and the Betrayals is everything is somewhat very cool. And his love interest with the file is written well in the Shadow Rising book only. So yeah. And my worst plotline in the series is going to be Rand chases after the Coldin and the Shadow Isle. Tell me the truth, guys. Have any of you seen the Shadow Isle and the Coldin as a potential threat? By the very starting of the Fires of Heaven, we can be able to notice that the five Forsaken has been discussing among themselves about the future events. So I do thought, okay, Fires of Heaven book is going to rock because we can be able to get a potential threat from all the five Forsakens now. And Robert Jordan does written Rand chases after Coldin for nearly 600 pages, right? Who cared about all these things? I never seen him as a potential threat, and his battle scene with Matt is not even written in this book. So yeah, the whole plot is somewhat a waste in time for me. You can able to skip this first 600 pages of this book and watch either Dan Graney video. That is super awesome. So, and my best non-POV character in the series is going to be Lanfear. We can able to categorize every single character from the Wheel of Time series into pure and evil, right? Lanfear is the only one. She seems very different. She does want a Rand by her side and wanted to control the whole world. She is the only character who does have a personal motivation, and yes, Rand does have a personal motivation right after the end of Fires of Heaven. So yes, I do super love her character, and I broke up when she actually died. That is super awkward to say. And yeah, and moving on, and my worst non-POV character are going to be all the Forsakens other than Lanfear. all these characters who's been introduced by the very start of the book, and they just disappeared and came at the very end to get mocked or snacked at the bottom by Rand or some other characters, right? They do get killed by Rand by the very end with ease. I can't able to see them as a potential threat at all. They are seen to be in the clowns. Even the mental is somewhat terrifying other than all these characters. So yes, um, all these characters should need to be written very well to make a potential good plot out of them. And my unpopular opinion in the series is Egwene is a lot better than Nynaeve. For me, Nynaeve is a trash. After Moraine's death, she does felt happy for that, right? Because she can able to marry Land Mandragon. If Egwene does these things, it is somewhat okay, very much unacceptable because she is very young. She is somewhat 16 or 17 in the series. But Nynaeve is 27, right? And she's also been an wisdom in the Two Rivers. And her character doing all these weird kind of scenarios. Uh, uh, it, I don't love her actually, and I don't know why Egwene does receives a lot of hate from the fandom. Um, I do love her character. She does done what it is seems to be right at the point in time. So yes, this is somewhat an unpopular opinion, I think so. And my future guess in the series, or Brand is somewhat going to die. It has been repeated page after page in Fires of Heaven book, right? So yeah, no concern about that. His character need to be written very well by the very end of the series by Brandon Sanderson, and I don't think Evelyn gonna end up with the Galad, and Gon is going to die because she does have the weird kind of a dream in the world of dreams, right? She does found Galad to be more attractive, and she ended up being loving Gon. All these things made me to feel okay. She's going to end up with Galad at the very end of the series, and I don't even know what all the other characters are going to come up with. Matt, Perrin, and Elena. Maybe Elaine is going to rule Andor and the whole map by the very end of the series. I do have the weird feeling that Moraine is going to come back because in one chapters in Chronos Watch, where Min got the viewing that Moraine is somewhat very useful in the Tarman Gaithan, right? So I do think, okay, Moraine is going to come back and Nynaeve is going to die by the very end of the series, and Moraine and Lan somewhat end up again at the start of the series, like bonding and water and Aes Sedai. I do think so. Maybe my guess is somewhat right by the very end. Moving on, ranking all these books by now, and I do want to rank all these books from worst to the best. Okay, and the worst books in the series is going to be Crown of Swords. Slog is another matter to worry about, but in this book, every character has been assassinated. You can't be able to love any of the characters who's been built up before. For example, Matt character has been assassinated, character's been assassinated, and the parent doesn't seem to be lovable at all in this book. And this book does ended in a much more horrible way. Rand has decided to get on a Samael in Alien. It is somewhat really very weird to read all this thing. I do think this is the worst book I have ever read in my life. And so moving on, there are a lot of questions among the fans when to read Newspring, whether before starting the series or after the end of the Fires of Heaven or at the very end of the 10th book. I would say don't read this book. What is point on reading a book which is a trash, right? And I do thought Moraine and Lance bonding is gonna be explained in a much more beautiful way, but it is somewhat really very weird to read all those characters, and it doesn't have any plot to deal with. It is somewhat written in some queer way just to make money. And the next thing you would have guessed by now, it is Fires of Heaven. The first 600 pages is somewhat a trash. Many do love to the very end of this book, but I don't see liking that one too. But yes, it does have a potential, but it is a slog. And moving on, the next book is The Eye of the World. I have some nostalgia right now. I do somewhat love this book now. Initially, I do rank this book 2 out of 5, but now I do think I do love this book even more because it has been 1 year by now. Still, I started reading the series, right? But on the first glance, it is somewhat an really worst introduction to the fantasy book, but now I do somewhat love this book. Maybe revisiting this may come to a good conclusion, which is not going to happen in the near future at all. Maybe a decade after. So the next book I would rank this The Great Hunt. I do think this book does have a lot of potential, but I haven't read this in my best of my time. I do gone on into some horrible times by reading this book. So yes, I can't able to come into a conclusion, but all these ancient concepts and selling has been introduced in this book, right? So yeah, I can't able to come to a conclusion on this one, but now I would rank this better than Eye of the World. And the first book I do loved in the series is The Dragon Reborn. I do love this book a lot, guys, because we do get an POV from all the other characters than Rand, right? We can able to get a lot of chapters from Perrin, from Egwene, from Nynaeve and Matt, right? So every character is somewhat very lovable, and the book ended up in much more good way by Rand as a taking of Canada. It is a traditional fantasy trope, but yeah, I do love all those battle scenes at the very end. Moraine taking on Balal, all these things are really very lovable. And the next book is The Lord of Chaos. This is the biggest book I have ever written in my life by now. It does have 1,004 pages, but it never appeared to be like that one. This book doesn't have a slog and it doesn't have any great moment also. It is somewhat a fast paced book. I do love this one, but it doesn't have any higher moments at all. Every page after page, we can able to get some suspicion about all the characters. A potential good one is Masterin Time. His character is somewhat really very interesting in this book. Yeah, overall, I do love this book very much. Maybe I would rate this book a 5 out of 5 now. Initially, I do rank it 4 out of 5, but I do see uh, this one is somewhat really very good. And the last book and the best among the series, it's my thoughts and many of the fans' thoughts too. It is The Shadow Rising. I do love this book a lot, guys. It does have big moments like Celine revealing herself as Lanfear and the best plot wherein taking on the Trollocs in the Two Rivers. And Rand's plot is somewhat slightly disappointing in this book, but overall, Robert Jordan just done a remarkable job in this book. So yeah, that's all. I do ranked all these books now. I can't able to take all these books by a hand right now. Um, ah, I do came a long way by now. Okay, I don't know when I'm going to finish the series. Maybe it would take another year or maybe 3 months. I can't able to tell right now. I am not currently reading this series, but I do love to kickstart reading again because all the books are somewhat terrible slogs right now. I do somewhat 200 pages into Path of Daggers, but I lost interest and I started to read some other fantasy books. So yeah, maybe I would complete the series by the end of July. I think so. I will let you know. So until then, happy reading to you. Tata, bye bye.